If the ArsenalVision podcast is recorded and no one's around to hear it, did it really release? This is the ArsenalVision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot. You can follow me on Twitter. Gunner. Yeah, the depths of the interlull combined with not a lot of news means that I don't imagine everybody's going to be racing to their audio devices to listen to this episode. But you are currently listening to this episode, which means you are just that little bit more special than all the others. And we do thank you and love you for being here. We're going to do something really fun today. We're going to do our instant reaction format for the season so far, as was suggested by a patron. So thank you for the suggestion. This is going to be headlines, stock rising, and stock falling for the season so far. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the first half of the Sunderland rewatch Clive and I did for patrons this week and put that at the back half of this, so you get Clive and I as a podcast at the back half of this. Because if you've never seen instant reaction, what we do is usually for the first 20 or 25 minutes, Clive and I do a pod. Just a pod, basically. Don't worry, there's not a nursery happening in the background here. That's just weirdly, for some reason, Paul's ringtone. So we do a pod at the beginning of these rewatches. By the way, the rewatches, we put the game on the screen and we watch it together and we stop it and we analyze it and we break down what worked and what didn't. So if you want to check that out, it's over on the Patreon. But we're going to have the start of that at the back of this, and we're going to have the front of this at the front of this. That should all make clear sense, and you'll see it as it happens in real time. Adam Cleary has a really good channel on YouTube. He is from The Independent, and he does great tactical breakdowns of things in a way that I love because he makes it accessible, right? The way he talks about it is not with jargon, but with accessible language. So you're going to get a pod tomorrow with me and Adam Cleary talking about Arsenal so far and his objective view on a lot of things about our new signings, our tactical nuances, and the title race. So you can look out for that on Patreon tomorrow. And if you want to get Patreon, you can do it with AVP 50 and save a few quid and see what you think. So we'd love to have you over there, but we're just glad to have you over here. And over here right now is the man with the nursery phone ring, which is not at all disturbing or worrying. It's Paul. Hello, Paz.
Woohoo!
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been outed by my phone ring. I have no comment to make on it.
It's probably for the best, given some of the things in the headlines currently. We will leave it all there. Okay, so this is going to be fun. We're going to do an instant reaction to the season so far, which means headlines, stock falling, and stock rising and stock falling. So the only place to start, Paul, and by the way, if you're saying, well, there was some news about this or some news about that, we covered some of the news, some Miles Lewis-Skelly stuff, some injury stuff, some upcoming season stuff with Clive in the section that'll be at the back half. So if you want the more topical stuff, that will actually be later in the pod. Anyway, okay, Paul, what's your headline for the season so far?
I'm torn between two, but I'm going to go with one, and that is hearing the signal inside the club for the noise outside the club.
Hearing the signal inside the club for the noise outside the club. I want to say it is every bit as clear as the headlines we usually get on the instant reaction. So this is a good reflection of the format. I appreciate it. Can you articulate that?
Can I elucidate and elaborate?
Yeah.
Look, I think the club has done really well in keeping, and the supporters too, but certainly the manager, the club, the team, of not getting too caught up in all the guff that went on before while we were busy being good, but maybe more good defensively and with our midfield than we were in terms of the overall team. We were waiting for the results to kind of come through. There was the fuss, the noise after the Liverpool game and the City game, which I think we all thought was misunderstood in terms of performances. And now when you listened, you shouldn't listen to the narratives, but you should a bit too. It's a question of degree, right? If it's feedback, and everything's relative, and it tells you something how others see your club, but doesn't mean they define your club. And they gave us a lot of guff to begin with, a lot of pushback, a lot of, we're not doing what we need to do. We don't take the risks, blah, blah, blah. And then it suddenly magically changes to maybe 3-4 weeks ago. Suddenly we're the best thing since sliced bread, because we kind of are very, very good. And so you listen to what's going on out there, but you don't get too carried away. In the meantime, I think we did really good at keeping a steady head, having a strong base, powering through, and suddenly gosh, we win a whole bunch of games in a row, and everybody's like, oh, they're really good. We were really good before. We just didn't have all the players. We hadn't hit our, the fundamentals were there.
We still
the
don't.
fundamentals were there.
Yeah, and to your point, I think the keeping your head thing is interesting because we live in a moment of immediate reactions, he says, ironically, as we're aping our instant reaction format, but of big narratives being formed with small changes. And so it's really important inside the club not to get too high, not to get too low. And one way you can do that, by the way, I think, is not playing a lot of big emotional games. Last season, we started the season with a lot of big emotional games because we were down to 10 men and we were losing players to injury and we were getting these terrible calls against us. And you saw it with Liverpool. Liverpool got off to a very hot start this season, but it was 96th minute winners, 97th minute winners, 83rd minute winners. And they were very emotional and they would get pegged back from 2-0 up and then they'd be 2-2 and then they'd win 3-2. And they were riding that emotion. But as we've seen, when it's that emotional and that intense, it can be hard to stay at that level. And they wind up losing 4 on the spin and falling away from the title race a little bit. We've played a lot of pretty boring games. We played a lot of low emotion games, low, not intensity games, because I think we play in a very intense way, but we've managed since that early hard start to have a relatively serene period until the Sunderland game, obviously when that emotion came back, but now we've got 2 weeks to recover from that. So do you think that's part of it? The fact that just the games themselves have, by and large, been relatively cold. They haven't been the fever pitch of emotional intensity like what Liverpool's been through.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty steady. And, a sign of that is there's no, hang on, where's all the pieces of wood to touch? But there's been no red cards. There've been no huge dramas.
Dodgy penalties.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a little bit, at least so far, a measure of kind of just the steadiness. And, we haven't had too many weird refereeing decisions. I mean, it's a question of degree. And I think part of that is, again, everybody gets into the idea that there probably shouldn't be a lot of weird decisions, even the referees, that this is a steady team that does well, that wins, that's in control. They're not going looking for the crazy thing to blow up for, or it's just this. Yeah. We've almost trained everybody into thinking we're going to be good, we're going to perform, we're going to do very well, we're going to defend. Apart from Sunderland didn't seem to get the memo. Everybody else has realized there's a point at which they should probably give up thinking they're getting points in that particular game. And yeah, they were in some kind of fever pitched whatever, but I mean, an interesting game of its own, to say the least. Things to learn from it, but also things to take from it, including two fine goals that didn't quite turn into what we wanted it to turn into. Yeah,
I think that's all roughly how I think about things as well. I'll give you my headline then, which is simply validations. There have been certain ideas and certain strategies that I think to this point in the season have been validated. The most obvious one is the summer strategy of building depth into the squad. Squad depth was the talking point going into this season. And sometimes the talking points going into a season wind up looking silly. For example, Liverpool's outrageous talent with Isak and Wirtz is going to, storm the league. Well, that looks pretty silly at this point. That hasn't happened. That's not to say that it couldn't at some point click and start to happen, but it certainly hasn't so far. Our theory of the case was we've got such squad depth that what could possibly derail us? We're so well positioned to take on challenges. And that approach has been validated. The addition of players that we might have even looked at as maybe a little surplus, might have been looked at as a little bit unnecessary, have wound up being really important pieces. Obviously, looking at the players that were out against Sunderland, it still almost didn't matter. We were still down to the bare bones at some level, but they're all coming back now. And the squad has allowed us to be at the top of the table despite all those absences. So I think it's validation for that. I think it's validation for 2 other things. One, is tied to the other. I said a lot last season, Paul, that there was going to be a lot of bad analysis of last season because, to your point, there was too much noise and not enough signal, right? How do you evaluate last season? Because if you're really inclined to not trust Mikel and not trust the club, you could say, well, we just weren't as good as we thought. But you could also very easily just say, no, it's just a story of injury. It's a story of some bad red cards, story of some bad penalties, and a story of injury. And that absent that, you have no ability to analyze the season accurately. And my theory was sort of, I don't think we learned much last season. And I think if we have our players, we're still the best or roughly the best in the league. And I think that's been validated because this season we've come back and we've been the best team in the league. The other validation is just what we thought going into the season. We knew we had a hard start, and there was a worry that that hard start could knock us from a path to the title. And the season has played out almost exactly as you would have thought a title contender would need it to play out. Survive an early difficult period, picking up a good number of points, don't fall away, and then step on the gas pedal and show your quality when you get through that run. And that's exactly what we've done. So I think we validated our summer strategy of adding depth. We validated that last season was probably more noise than signal. And we validated our preseason thought that we could be title winners by riding through the hard period with a good point total and then accelerating away from the pack during an easier period. And so I think those three key themes, Paul, and in particular, of course, the summer strategy, have all been validated to this point in the season.
Yeah, I think that's right. While you're talking, I'm building up a picture of like a rocket program where you've got all the preparation, all the trials, etc., the checks, you have ignition, you have liftoff. You're only getting going at that stage. Then you got the booster stage and like the rocket shaking like crazy. That was kind of the first. I think we've been through that first stage of like, you got to get through the early atmosphere where it's roughest, it's bumpiest. But if you don't get that terminal lift off and blast and all those first stage things, you're always up against a Liverpool that was so hot last year, or a Man City who every other season has come out strong, basically early, and is ready, and like almost never lets off the pace. So you don't have the chance to catch up. It's like I'm not an actual rocket scientist, but it's like that first phase.
That surprises me.
Yeah.
See, this is the first I'm learning of that.
Yeah, and to your point, you have to have all the resources. You have to have the redundancies built in, because that first stage, if it doesn't happen then, it ain't happening. And I think we've got ourselves in a position with that first, it was probably the second stage of rocket launching, where you're up there, you're about ready to get rid of the boosters, and now you're into the next phase where there'll be an ignition. Like there's 3-4 phases in this season, and we have navigated the first phase really well and put ourselves in a position where we might actually break free of the atmosphere and off into orbit. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know if we're going to the moon, putting out a satellite, or we're actually off to Mars, but we have successfully navigated that first phase.
Hopefully, like winning the Premier League. I don't actually think if we launch a satellite, the fans are going to be super happy. There's going to be a lot of confusion, and it may be very interesting, but I think it's more
very
about
impressed,
winning the Premier League.
Pissed.
Yeah. And
pissed.
On the theme of validation, there's not a lot of things about the season so far where I can say this was a misstep or a tactical approach that did. I mean, you could pick the bones out of certain things, like could we have gone for Liverpool more, right? Or like there are little things I think you could tease out. Could we have made more subs against Sunderland? There's always going to be micro-analysis moments in the season. But I think from a thematic standpoint, it largely aligns with the things we would have thought. And I do think it is worth looking at the start to this season so far as a bit of a reminder of why last season fell short, because we're frustrated by the absences we have currently, and we're still in 10 times the position we were in last season, right? So now, there's some people that would say, but my biggest gripe last season is that we didn't go into the market in January, which might have insulated us more from those challenges. I think by that point, it may have actually already been too late, and I'm not sure there was a move we could have made that would have helped us. And the irony, Paul, the deep irony, is the debates we were having last season was, should we go into the market in January for players we're not sure we want if it impacts our summer? And I would ask anybody right now who wanted us to move last January, and of course I did too, would you trade some of the signings we got this summer for a January move? Like, for example, would you have Ollie Watkins in the team right now, having gotten him last January, if it meant we didn't have Eza or Gyökeres? And to me, I don't think that would have changed the outcome of last season enough to want to alter the course of what we're doing now. So, do you see what I mean, Paul? Like, I think as good as we are right now and the things that we can feel good about, it also makes me feel like we largely kind of took the right course last season,
I think it was very steady. I think it was the right course. I do wonder, I don't think whatever we did in January was going to impact how the season ended up. And so I was okay with it being steady. But, Gyökeres is one of those players where he's starting to come into it, but he hasn't fully, I bet there are people listening who are thinking, well, if you got the right striker in January.
Well, maybe you get past PSG, to be fair, and then would you take a Champions League trophy and give back Gyökeres if you had to? So that's fair.
There's always a debate. There's always the what ifs.
You know what? Maybe the better answer is, had we been better in the summer last summer, we're really going back to history now for no good reason. But what I was going to say is, if we, for example, if Andrea Berta had been in place for the January window, rather than the disruption of Edu leaving, and I think you have to look on the Edu era now and say, we did pretty well, all things considered, because he doesn't look like he's got his hands around what's going on for us. But had we had Berta in sooner and the ability for him to operate the way he wanted to, then maybe there would have been a more effective January. But that disruption of not really having a person in that position at that time probably influenced it. But again, to kind of wrap up this section, I think it is simply a point that the season to date so far has really validated the strategy around the squad building and really validated thoughts we've had about the club. So I think we can move on from this section and hit the next section, which, if you're familiar with the instant reaction, is stock rising. So we're each going to pick a stock rising from the season so far. That can be a player, it can be a theme, it can be a concept, and we'll each hit a stock falling, and then you'll get the Clive section. So, Paul, I will turn it over to you for the first stock rising.
A few ways that you could go with this, but I think it should be a player. And so I'm going to go with, because it has to be I think there has to be a element of significant surprise versus our original. I'm going to go with Trossard. And maybe there's some recency bias, but I think that's okay. But I also think I'll go with Trossard as emblematic of the left-hand side, because I think we could say over the last couple of seasons that good or bad, the left-hand side was not really a contributor in the way we needed to our attacking prowess. And it's in some games it's our best side of the pitch. I think also defensively it's got a lot stronger. But I'm going to go with Trossard because that was a guy that, so many of us wondered what his future was, if he was sticking around. If he was sticking around, was he going to be the third guy in line, the fourth guy in line? And there's a lot to go in the season. We're just, we're doing this assessment one quarter in, and that's what it is. Everything can change and probably will. But he's been a big rediscovery for himself within the team. He's been, I think, psychologically quite a significant player within the team. Defensively, he works his ass off, and he doesn't get yanked just because it's later on in the game. And that whole left-hand side is starting to work, and I think it's part of the reason he's played. Injuries on top of that, but he was getting picked before injuries. And I think one of the things he does is, with Saka 1v1 a lot on the right-hand side without Odegaard, we need more control, more of a platform on the left where we would have normally seen it on the right. And he and Calafiori have found ways that, that he tends to pull into midfield. Calafiori bombs past him. Zubimendi and Rice finding ways to connect around that side. Calafiori getting stronger on the defensive side this season, I think, from what we saw in his early stages last season. I think the whole left side has lifted up, and he's bought time and control for him, for the rest of the team, and for the right-hand side, I think.
Yeah, and I think he's an interesting choice, too, when you look at going into the season. He would have been the player that I think most people would have said, if you got to let the guy go, that's an area where we could probably move on and make a change. And when he was getting this pay rise, I have to admit, there was a part of me that's like, we're giving a pay rise to a guy who looks like he could be fourth choice at the position.
Yeah.
When there's market value to move him on, and my economic brain, Arsene Wenger pilled brain was like, we need net spend. We got to cash in on him. But we paid him more money, and he's rewarded us with a phenomenal season at a time when now Martinelli's out and Nani's been out and Eza's had to move into midfield. And so he's not just been playing left wing, he's been the only left wing. So it all kind of broke in the direction of Leo. And I remember when we were in Singapore, we saw him and his biceps were like the size of my thighs. And I think someone named him as like the
Gabby.
hardest worker in the gym. Yeah, Gabby did. And
the question was, who's a beast in the gym? And his first thought was Havertz, because Havertz is coming back from injury. And then then he comes back to it and says, no, hang on, I need to go back to that. Trossard is a beast in the gym.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to his professionalism, his commitment. I think because he always looks tired, and I can identify with that, and because he maybe is a bit truculent, right? Like he seems like he's always a little bit upset, and he even admitted that. He's like, I want to win everything. I want to win the small-sided game in practice. I want to win everything. We sometimes maybe miss the forest through the trees with him, which he's an extremely intelligent, technical, hardworking, committed professional who has been one of the best additions we've made at one of the best values in the league. So I think he's a great pick, Paul. I was tempted to go with a thematic stock rising, but we kind of covered that in the headline. I think I am just going to go with a player. And look, there are other players you're going to say, how do you not pick Gabby with his goals? Or how do you not pick Declan Rice, who's maybe been the best player in the world for the start of this season? He's been insane.
It's a stock rising.
Yeah, so my stock rising is definitely Martin Zubimendi. This is the linchpin addition to the team. The guy who had played the position for years was going, and so was his backup, who had also been important for us. This is a position on the pitch that really wins games without a lot of headlines. I mean, Manchester City's 6 won the Ballon d'Or, okay? And Rodri is handing the Spain keys off to the guy we signed. A guy we've known we were getting since January, a guy that Liverpool wanted, that other top clubs wanted, and without much ballyhoo and without much credit given, this signing was done early, and nobody was excited in June when we hadn't signed anybody yet, in July when we hadn't signed the big names yet. But this guy has been, in my view, the most important addition at one of the most important positions, and the position where we had the most riding on it, because we had the least backstop if it didn't work. And coming into the Premier League, you can see it. Florian Wirtz is a player I thought was sensational, and I thought he was a sure thing signing. But the pace of the league, the physicality of the league, some of the dynamics that he's had to come into, it just hasn't clicked for him yet. Doesn't mean it never will, but it hasn't. And you've seen with strikers, Gyökeres has needed a little bit of time to adapt, and Sesko certainly isn't firing on all cylinders, and Ekitike's hitting a bit of a harder time now. And like these players coming in from other leagues don't just hit the ground running right away. That's pretty common. And you stick them in the midfield in a positional system with a ton of responsibility for a team that wants to win the title, replacing 2 senior professionals that have had that position locked down for years. And what does he do? He goes on to score important goals, set up important goals, play all over the pitch. And to your point, Paul, about the left-hand side coming to life, that is a big byproduct of him as well, oh, by the way, because he has the ability to play off both feet and to slide to the left side of the pitch in a way that our former 6s maybe didn't. And as a last point on this, our defensive record is phenomenal, but I think it has gone up a level because he is not someone who winds up getting turned around and having to run back towards his goal. He is not someone who gets bypassed. He does have the mobility to travel. So I think, Paul, if you're going to look at the number of dice we rolled this summer, the one that had to come up, whatever number you needed to come up, whatever the good number is, was Zubimendi, and he has maybe even more than I would have expected. And yeah, for me, he's the clearest stock rising and impact on our season in terms of the areas where we had a potential failure point.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. He was probably my second. I think he's going to be like a bit Timber for us in the sense that we knew Timber was the best right back in the league before the league seemed to even realize he was a good player. Now, okay, Zubimendi is a name that's been out there, so people have expected things. They thought maybe he might go to Liverpool last season, but he kind of came in. There wasn't that much fanfare. And for us, he plays such a low-key role. I mean, he's absolutely a guy who's quite happy to play a game that he is not noticed in, because that's as much like if he can get the team ticking, that's the way he thinks. He's one of those players. Arteta before him, Busquets, those kinds of players are quite happy to be very low-key in that position, and like, oh, what's he do? He just switches it from one side to the other. It's boring, he doesn't have any of those raking passes of the ball over the top. Well, he does, but not if he doesn't need them. If he can progress it to Odegaard, or Rice is pushed ahead of him, or Calafiori is pushed through, he'll do the pass before the pass before the pass. And he's all about rhythm and tempo and all the things that are pretty boring if you're in neutral. But I think very, very soon people will start talking about him the way they suddenly have started talking about Timber in the last 3-4 weeks, where you wonder what it took them so long to realize. But like, Timber's probably the best right back in the league, and he's getting better as he goes along. And Zubimendi is, and on top of all the things you mentioned, and you did kind of mention this as well, when you need it in a game, he'll step into the 8-10 attacking spot and take up. Like, when he's taken shots, they've all been corkers. He hit the crossbar against Sunderland. We scored after that anyway. But he's done that a few times where he's come in. Who was the game where he scored the wonder goal from outside the box? Long range.
Come on. We don't have Tim on the pod, man. There's no chance you're going to get that from me. Let's be honest.
And he's got it in his boots. It's if he takes a shot, it's going to be quality. It's going to be on target or darn close. He's obviously class.
He scored 2 against Forest, and those are his only 2, so it must have been in that game.
How about in there?
Yeah.
I think it was the Forest game, Elliot, where he scored that corker
shout.
from outside. And then he had the header, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And he people were saying, he won a couple of aerial duels against Sunderland and critic. Like, he wins all his aerial duels which
was known, by the way. He did in Spain as well. That was something that was sort of surprising but known about him. He's also not quite as diminutive as maybe I thought. Yeah,
and you're like, that's a weird stat. It must have some quirky reason why. They must do something. But you see him. He jumps first. He's in the right spot. He's just super smart. His superpower is intelligence, and also been really, really good at football and passing.
Yeah. And you know what, Paul? Let's not underrate availability in a season where availability has been a problem. We haven't had Kai almost all season. We haven't had Odegaard almost all season. We haven't had Saka for a chunk of the season. Those are big, big absences. Nani's missed a huge chunk of the season. Martinelli's now been out for a little bit. Joker's missed a game. And if you said to me, what's the position we probably couldn't tolerate an absence, I think it's Zubimendi. I mean, I guess you could play Rice there like we did to start the West Ham game when it was Rice, Odegaard, and Eze. And maybe that could have worked. But barring that, with all due respect to Norgard, who I like, they're different players, and I don't think we can play the way we want to play if Norgard has to start a lot of games. And Zubimendi has played more minutes than everybody in the league except for Gabby and David Raya. And he's pretty close to them. He's appeared in every game. He's started 10 of the 11, and he's played in all 11. So that availability has been massive as well. So for me, of all the things we signed, if they all went wrong, they all went up in smoke, we still could have been very good, except if Zubimendi hadn't worked. And he's worked better than I would have expected, so he'd be mine. Let's shift to the less pleasant conversation, which is the stock falling. Now, this can be about anything. So maybe you'll pick an Arsenal topic, maybe you won't. I haven't really thought through mine yet, so I'm going to figure that out on the fly. But do you have a stock falling in mind?
I do. I have 3 names who I think are candidates.
Let's hear the candidates, because I think that's kind of an interesting discussion to begin with. What's your selection group?
Benjamin White, Ethan Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and I'm going to go with Miles Lewis-Skelly.
Interesting. Okay. I think, so my opinion of that group is I can understand that grouping, and I probably would have gone with Ben White over the other 2, principally because of their age and the time they still have for everything to work out for them in all the best ways. But talk me through why you have Miles.
Well, I did think about all three, obviously, and I'll tell you why I think you're wrong.
Okay. I'd love to hear that. By the way, I should mention, in the Clive section we have coming up, we discuss Miles and some of the sort of shit stirring around Sky Sports reporting, clubs sniffing around, and Tuchel wanting him to go get playing time somewhere. Miles isn't going anywhere. He's going to be at Arsenal for years to come. But that chat is coming up with Clive if you want to hear his take on it. But go for it, Paul.
So this is stock falling, expectation versus how it played out.
Can I stop you? Because I think this is important. We always say this to the patrons who consume the instant reaction. But if you've never consumed one of these, which is a weird way to put that, but stay with me. Stock falling is not who's bad or who's doing bad. Stock falling, much like stock rising, is intended to be someone where the situation previously may have been higher and is now lower in terms of their position in the squad or in your estimation or how the season is turning out for them. So to your point, Paul, it is more about the move from expectation to reality than it is meant to be, someone's not good or I don't rate them. So just important to clarify that because I think that is an important distinction. Anyway, go ahead. Enough throat clearing.
Yeah, and look, everybody loves these players, and all three players that I was going to pick from are talented, and I think have bright futures with us. That's not the question here. But stock falling this season, Miles Lewis-Skelly. Why? Well, I think people can guess at this stage where I'm going with this. He was a starter in the second half of last season.
A star, you might say.
Yeah. Talked about as the answer to England's left-back conundrum. And, Calafiori on the other side of it had his injuries. He was kind of a bit hit and miss, hit in attack, miss in defense. Unfortunately, Calafiori is, as I said a couple of times, Mikel Arteta's new favorite toy.
To be fair, with the Italy team encouraging their players to play injured for their nation and prioritize the World Cup, this may be a poorly timed segment, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But Calafiori's been great and phenomenal, and not in every game. But interestingly, when he hasn't been great or phenomenal, he's been solid, which is the other reason Miles Lewis-Skelly would have been getting on the pitch last season. I said many times he was still learning to play the offside trap or our offside trap, going backwards. He was getting done 1v1 against wingers. I haven't seen any of that this season. He's been a very capable defender. His understanding and his relationship with Rice in particular. So we see a different role from Rice this season. What's that about? I think it's all about Calafiori. I think, and a bit about Zubimendi, and that Zubimendi is so flexible and happy to move around the pitch and actually use that as part of how they stir the pot. But a huge part, I think, of the Rice role is making the space for Calafiori. That's, if you want to differentiate how we play each season, there's a few key this season, a key feature. And one of the reasons I think we were unfairly criticized for not being progressive in the way we played against Liverpool and against City was they were supposed to turn out into more attacking games. And you critique the players on the pitch. No, we've got a bloody left back who plays in midfield and joins the attacking line. And as we get better as we got better in this season, we saw more and more of that happening in games where he'll be where the striker could be or where the left eight would peel into the back line and run in behind. He's almost a player most likely to be running in behind at times. So I'm talking a lot about Calafiori, but really it's not that Miles Lewis-Skelly did anything wrong.
Yeah.
But like the Calafiori thing and what, the bad news for Miles Lewis-Skelly is it's not form. He can't play better and get into that position, right? He's going to have to actually add new things to his game to displace Calafiori because Mikel's not going to give that up on the left-hand side. That's his extra man in midfield you weren't expecting trick, and he always has one. Pep always has one. It might be Stones, it might be whoever, right? It might be Bernardo Silva off the wing is actually playing in midfield. They have a thing they do for most of the season, and Mikel Arteta's is Calafiori can't be marked. And he can't because he's left back. He moves all around the midfield. He doesn't stand where you might expect Miles to stand. That's going to be great growth opportunity for Miles, but man, does he have his work cut out for him if Calafiori is playing like this in attack and defense. And of course, look what it's cost him. So, I mean, he's had the biggest drop off in his fortunes. Nothing wrong with his play. He has things he needs to work on. And if he needs to get past Calafiori, he's going to have to add a lot to his game. Or to your point, maybe he needs to think about maybe a positional change. Like, that's never been the way I went. The talk about maybe he could play in midfield. Like, I just don't think that's a huge option at Arsenal. And I do think he can be a great and different left back. So I really liked that career path for him. I still think that's the right career path for him, but man, he's going to have to, we've seen him, the clever passes in behind and the connections with the attacking side of it, but he's got to do probably a lot more of that every time he gets on the pitch. And he's very good defensively, but not do that thing where he carries two defenders on his back to see if he's going to get a free kick or not. There are a few things he needs to adjust in his game. And he's done nothing wrong. Here he is, stock fallingest, and he's done nothing wrong, and he's been pretty good every time we've seen him. That's how big a challenge he has ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, it is the life at a big club that wants to win everything, that you're going to be pushed for your position. Yeah. And things broke right for Miles, and he came in and he played absolutely brilliantly last season at left back. I don't know if Mikel always thought Miles was a left back or he was an emergency left back who thrived and then we just leaned into it. I don't know what his future is positionally. I know he could be a great left back and has shown he could be a great left back. This is someone who played against Real Madrid in the Champions League, was excellent. This is someone who scored big goals for us, against Manchester City, in fact, who scored goals for England and now finds himself struggling for an England place and finds himself with 92 Premier League minutes for Arsenal this season. So yeah, his stock falling in the sense of his circumstances are not as good as they were last season. But for a 19-year-old, is he still 19, by the way? I believe he is. Yeah.
I don't know.
Just 19. Yep. Just 19. In fact, only just 19 by 48 days. Who has a good head on his shoulders, who's raised by this club, who's in the right club to be developed. I think it's a stock rising. I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to frame it slightly differently. He's ahead of schedule. Sure. No one had Miles Lewis-Skelly breaking out from the academy last season. Everybody had it as Ethan Winery and then Max Dowman. And I think he's a little bit ahead of schedule. Bukayo Saka got into the team when no one was talking Bukayo Saka really publicly, and he got in at left wing back. And then the squad moved around a little bit. Alex Iwobi moved out, and things changed, and he got in at a winger, and the rest is history. Miles is already way ahead for his age. You look at someone like Rico Lewis, is lauded as being an incredible player for Manchester City, and Miles had more minutes than him last season and has roughly, I think, more minutes in all comps this season than Rico Lewis. Just for comparison, I think someone in a group chat had mentioned that to me. So I think Miles is ahead of schedule. I don't know that even Miles would have thought, I'm going to be a star player and an England starter at 18. So he is now resetting the timing and resetting the expectations a little bit and relearning, but he is learning inside of the best club in the world at present, in my mind, to be doing that, where the best interests of him and his career are being carefully guarded. And where I do confess that maybe I'm being a bit of a Pollyanna is that Nketiah coming in means that there are now three options for left back. And it is my belief that signing more than any maybe signals that left back is not necessarily what Mikel wants for Miles long-term regularly, although I could be wrong. But I would simply say that he is ahead of schedule developmentally in terms of where our expectations for this player might have been just 12 months ago, including himself, right? Including where his expectations might have been for him. And so he's made huge leaps. He's burst onto the global scene. He's burst onto the club scene. He's burst onto his national team scene. And now he's going to take some time to develop and improve, and he's going to play, and he's going to play in key situations. But where his future goes from here will almost certainly be positive based on his talent. At the same time, Paul, where I will agree with you is a 19-year-old who's breaking out needs one thing more than anything: minutes. They need minutes. No matter how great it is to train with the best players in the world, this is the time of your career where nothing is as valuable as minutes at the top level. And if you can't get access to minutes, then all the great things that happened last season might be undone by not being able to develop. So our Arsenal Football Club's job is not to develop Miles Lewis-Skelly. It's to win trophies. But for Miles Lewis-Skelly's development, minutes are going to be crucial. And this is where I think you're correct, is that his path to minutes looks a lot more complicated at this point in time.
Yeah, though, as you say that, I'd say it's still their job to give him time, to give him minutes. But to your point, maybe Mikel Arteta is not going to play you because you're young. He's going to play you because you're the best player available at that particular moment in a game, or for the next game coming up, or because he needs to rotate and he needs players of high level. So nobody's getting a freebie because they're young and we want to develop you. So I think that's exactly right. And again, to underline the fact that this is not about form, he's still in form. Last season was not an aberration. We've seen it when he's played this season. That dribble against Atletico Madrid, which basically, that was the dagger through the heart for them. That was the point at which they knew they were cooked. He was literally running up the pitch with the chef's hat on, carrying a big pot like Ratatouille and cooking them. I mean, it was just an unbelievable moment. He's got it. He's still got really clever passes in the attacking line where you're like, oh, wow, he actually can do all of that. The Calafiori stuff. He runs in behind. He'll run in on goal and threaten the goal. Like, he needs to do more of it, but he's got it. It's not like he's a guy who can defend and he do a bit of midfield. He's not Zinchenko. He's just good at the midfield bit. He's got all three phases of the game, but he needs maturity, presence. He needs to bring it more. Like, nobody can deny Calafiori comes with presence in every game. So it's just, he's done phenomenal for a guy his age. So I fully agree with your assessment that his best times in years are ahead of him and will be at Arsenal Football Club.
Yeah, and so I'm being a little bit argumentative for the sake of the conversation, but to be fair, Paul, of course, his stock is falling in the sense that his circumstance is less advantageous than it was last season. But I think we both agree that on talent and on age, there's still a lot of time, which is why, like the Ben White thing for me, I'm not going to pick him, but I would simply say Ben White's in the absolute prime of his career, and he should just be somewhere where he's the first choice option because he's that good. Now, you could say the future of football is shifting such that the best players will be content to be squad players at the big clubs versus starters at the smaller clubs. It may shift that way because there's so many minutes to share around. But I thought it was noteworthy that Ben White did not get the Slavia Prague game. That was weird to me because it just feels like Timber's a player who could have used a rest. Ben White is more than good enough for that game. And the fact that he didn't get that game, it didn't even get on that early in that game was noteworthy. And then didn't get on in the Sunderland game when maybe you could have said, well, let's bring him on for Saka or something and reinforce.
Doesn't it make you think that there's something around niggles or full fit? He's fit enough to be on the bench. He's fit enough to play, but he's not right where he would want to be fitness wise, or
let's
they would
never
want
forget,
to do.
that Ben White played through injury for the better part of a season and damaged himself in so doing. And I just sort of wonder if he's ever gotten fully right. That is a fair question. I hate to speculate on it because it could be viewed as a convenient excuse, but it's certainly a fair question.
And we've seen flashes of brilliance from him again this season in small amounts, but we've also seen the physical pop you see, the difference when Timber's on versus when White's on. Because like the thing he had to his rep was his relationship with Odegaard and Saka. So maybe when they're back and you see a little bit more of his, I still don't think that makes him better than Timber on the pitch, but it may draw him up to a level where there are games where you say, okay, this is a Ben White game. We got Saka, we got Odegaard. We want to do that thing over on the right-hand side. We get Ben White in. He's got his physical levels up. He's kind of right there, nip and tuck with Timber. It's hard to see him pushing past Timber at this stage, but he could get to where it's more parity because Odegaard and Saka are back. We'll see it when we see it. Maybe Timber's got that too, because that was the knock against Timber, was he didn't have that same attacking understanding or maybe even capability. And I think I've changed my mind on that. I always thought Actually, I always thought that was coming. You could see it building with him, and now I think it's there. But he's not going to have that same kind of chemistry with Odegaard and Saka. Maybe he just develops a different chemistry with them.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I owe a stock falling before we shift to the Clive conversation. It's always dangerous when you step outside of talking about your own club on these podcasts because we don't watch others as closely. But I don't have, other than the kind of cluster that you mentioned, I don't really have one other than Arne Slot's Liverpool project. I mean, it is the clearest stock falling of the season in my view. I mean, to have a losing streak like he's had with that team after winning the title last season, the amount of discontent that you see there in terms of his type of football. Clearly, he kept a steady hand on the wheel last season and has decided he wants to change what Liverpool is this season. And that transition is going about as poorly as it can go. A 3-0 loss to City was pretty embarrassing, but they have been 96-minute winners away from being much further down the table. They are level on points with Manchester United. They're, 2 points or 3 points up on Everton? There's no way to know how many points up they are on Everton, so we'll just have to speculate because I'm not going to open a window to actually look at the table. The pursuit of Isak following the signing of Ekitike is hard to understand. To go past £100 million on a player who was in a contentious situation with Newcastle, who has had fitness issues, who is clearly an extraordinarily talented player, when you are staring down the barrel of a center back crisis and you don't have the solidity in midfield, when you've gone for wing backs as fullbacks as your signings and you've lost one of the most unique talismanic players in the league's history in Trent, the whole project, the way Trent has been received, the booing of him when he came back, Slot going on the losing streaks, Isak not making an impact in their season yet, Vert's not working out. And sometimes you can look really dumb, but everybody who questioned Liverpool's squad building has looked smart. The fullbacks don't seem to make a lot of sense. The midfield doesn't seem to have a lot of solidity. They're relying on aging center backs, and they don't have much behind it. And all of those things have proven to be a problem for them. Konate looks done. I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but he's a shell of himself. They didn't get Gehi. They may have to go again in January, but is FSG going to go big again? That's not traditionally been how they do it. Now, you could say, no, you're thinking about this wrong. The season was always going to be bumpy. They won a title last season. What they're thinking is Salah is going to go, Van Dijk is going to go, and they're going to be a back three team with Kerkez and Frimpong, steaming up the wings as wing backs, and Ekitike and Isak playing up front in it too. And maybe that's the future, and maybe that future is a path to green. But football doesn't wait for anyone, and if they have a massively disappointing season this season, which they're already on pace to do, I don't think that there's going to be a lot of forgiveness for that. So this is the season I think everybody outside of Liverpool was going to look at Slot and say, all right, now we're really going to find out what you're about and what your project is about. And so far, Paul, it's not been a positive reflection on him. And I have to say, I have time for Slot. I like the way he talks about football in general, and I think he's potentially too honest. Sometimes I think he talks about football in a very clear and open way, and sometimes says things maybe you shouldn't say just because of the way the narrative can be spun. But what do you think of the idea that Liverpool's project is a clear stock falling because they took a very unique and aggressive stance on how to build for the future, and right now it looks like it's not panning out?
Yeah, I mean, come on, they were dominant for most of last year. They were able to coast in, take their foot off the gas. They spent a absolute shitload. They broke your heart by getting rid of Trent. You seem more upset than the Liverpool.
Well, I mean, they're quite upset given that they're defacing murals and booing him when he comes back, which is absolutely insane, but okay.
I won't be surprised to see pictures of you out there with them. And it's a massive fall off. They've completely flubbed the defensive line. I can't believe how they've left themselves vulnerable there. And they've Slot seems totally rattled at the moment. Generally, I've liked him as a coach, trying to be as fair to him as I can be. I think he's smart, clever, blah, 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 but he seems totally rattled. And suddenly, that's what I expected to see a bit more of last year. And sometimes it's the sequencing. And, had last year been this year and vice versa, you'd say, oh yeah, that makes sense. But they got it the wrong way around. So they're pretty flustered. Look, they'll probably get their shit together in the second half of the season to some degree, but it's a massive fall off from what was expected. I mean, they should have been the favourites coming into this season. There's no reason they shouldn't have been. And now they're only 3 points ahead of Everton. I looked it up while you were talking.
How did you find that information?
Don't know.
They lost 9 times last season in all comps. And you could say that some of that was during the period where, to your point, they had their foot off the gas. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. They've already lost 7 times in all comps this season, and 8 if you count the loss to Crystal Palace, which was another lead thrown away in the League Cup. And it is definitely the sign of a team that is not performing the way you'd expect. But I would argue, I think the narrative that they, quote, took their foot off the gas at the end of last season is nonsense. I think some of the cracks were starting to show. I think the fatigue of senior players, the loss of form, the defensive vulnerabilities were starting to show as the Klopp era waned, as the Slot era rose, as the ages started to take their toll. And I think this season is more a continuation of that than it is a change from that. So, look, no one's going to take an Arsenal podcast's view on Liverpool seriously. But given what they spent and the very specific viewpoint they had in the market of how to get better, it doesn't look like it's bearing fruit. They took big stances on big spend, on big players in positions where you could argue they were already strong. Luis Diaz has gone and he's become a massive figure for Bayern, who look like the best team in the world if it's not Arsenal. Wirtz has come in and it hasn't worked. Right? I mean, obviously, we cannot talk about Liverpool without mentioning the tragic passing of Diogo Jota, which is a horrific and devastating impact on a club, and certainly impacts how they're performing on the pitch at some level in their squad building. But despite that, I still think the flaws are real, and long may it continue. That's all I can say. So I think we can leave it there for our instant reaction to this part of the season. You get more of this fantastic analysis after every single match over on the Patreon. We're going to go to the Clive and Elliot section now. But before we do that, I think it is absolutely paramount that I tell you that if you are hiring or want to hire, you should be using Indeed. And it's really this simple. There may be no experience on the planet today that is worse than the hiring experience, both for the candidate and for the company. The company can't find the right candidates. The candidate can't get themselves noticed for jobs where they should be noticed. Indeed helps you stop struggling to get your posts seen on other sites. It helps you stop jumping from site to site to site. With Indeed sponsored jobs, you stand out and hire fast. Your post jumps to the top of the page for the relevant candidate, so you reach them faster. And because you reach them faster, they're more excited about you. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. And it's not just more applications, it's more applications from the right kind of candidates. All right? And I think that is great. By the way, with sponsored jobs, I love this. There's no monthly subscription or long-term contracts. You pay for results. I think it's fine to pay for something if it's good. I don't mind paying for things that are good, that deliver results. I don't want to just pay for things that I get nothing from. So with Indeed, you pay for the results. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners to this show get $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Just go to Indeed.com/ArsenalVision right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed's all you need, Paul. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Okay, and now I'm going to throw it to me and Clive, and here's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear the Friday Night Clive intro music because I used it for this chat, and it's so good, and you never get to hear it unless you're over there, and I think it is some of the best stuff. It's kind of a takeoff of a Saturday night show of a similar kind, and so you can see and hear that now. So here is me and Clive, and we love you, and enjoy this chat. Coming to you live from studios in Minneapolis, USA and London, England, it's Friday Night Clive. Starring Clive Palmer. And your host, Elliot Smith. It's not Friday Night Clive, but when you got music that good, it's just a pain in the ass not to use it more. So I used it. This is the Arsenal Vision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. I love that music. I love it. I love that intro. I think it's great, and it doesn't get enough attention, and it needs more. So I'm using it. Now, Clive. I could play the Clive video too if you want.
No. Please. Please.
Okay. See,
be
careful what you wish for. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not bad actually.
Yeah.
I'm good.
We had like an hour-long chat leading up to this, so it's going to feel like you're talking to me.
Yeah.
Than anybody wants.
Well, I've been doing lots of training now. I'm trying to get fit. I'm trying to get more like muscle fit. Like stability and core and.
What's the workout regime?
Well, I'm in the gym. I'm doing bits, but you know what blokes are like? We tend to do stuff we like doing. So my chest press is quite good, whereas other things that I need to do around hip flexors and glutes, I'm not so good at squatting and things like that. So I got to work. I'm gonna balance it out, So my wife is an athletics trainer, and trust me, she's ready to get me into shape.
My roommate in New York accused me of only working out the muscles you can see in the mirror. He's like, your back, your glutes. He's like, no muscle there, mate.
My back's a trampoline, mate. So I'm working on it.
During COVID, when everybody was buying fitness equipment, we picked up a rowing machine. And so I row every day. And I like that because I feel like I get a cardio workout, but I get a little bit of, core strength from it too. So
that's good. That's good. Yeah. You're good. You're better than me.
Well, it doesn't take up much room. That's the nice thing. You don't have to have like a whole room to, if you have a treadmill or something that can take up a lot of room, these rowing machines they're pretty small.
Yeah, I've got one. I've got everything. I've got all the gear, mate. I've got a rowing machine. I've got a watt bike, all in the garage, sitting there with bits.
Great to hang clothes on.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, we have a bike that has one pedal missing and has basically since the day we got it never even attached that pedal. So that one was not a good decision. I don't like the bike. Anyway, hello patrons. By the way, love you for being here. Thanks for being here. We're gonna do a second half rewatch of the Sunderland game. Before we do that, not a lot of bits and bobs going on, Clive. A couple of little bits and pieces I guess we could talk about. There was Sky wanted to report that my clubs are sniffing around for Miles Lewis-Skelly. I mean, it's weird, right? Because that doesn't strike me as real. And I know Hand of Arsenal had gone on socials and said this is nonsense. I do think the Miles Lewis-Skelly situation is at least one worth keeping an eye on in terms of trajectory, just because he now has two young, talented senior professionals potentially ahead of him, depending on how you see the hierarchy at left back. He was brought up as a midfielder. Outside of Zubimendi, our other quote-unquote six is, a guy who isn't long for the club. So do you think there could be a positional change to find him more opportunities? What do you think his path to playing time looks like?
See, on the ArsenalVision podcast, we tend to think more deeply, don't we, Elliot? Right? So
some people on the ArsenalVision podcast tend to think more deeply.
So let's think this through together, right? So I think it's quite clear to me, I don't care what Man City do, we have the best squad and we are tooled up to have a really good go at the title this year. And if anything, we need to be destabilized. So what are the ways to destabilize us that are unique to us? We haven't won a title since Arne Afro, 21 years, right? So basically, we're in a situation where the mentality when it comes to winning time is going to be tested, right? We have the deepest squad we've ever had. It's not super deep compared to what Man City have had in the past, what Chelsea have right now. But due to the success of our buys and how they've integrated, on top of the youth talent that we have, on top of the group that we had last season, we have real quality depth. Quality depth, and everyone can see it. And we have a framework and a style of play which suits the players we have. We're not doing Liverpool trying to integrate children into their fullback areas and into the number 10 position and getting pushed all over the pitch. We haven't got that problem. The league style is coming towards us rather than going away from us. So we haven't got that problem. So the problem is you're going to destabilize Arsenal. One, stay close, test the mentality. Two, attack their players. Try to buy their players, because see if we can test dressing room happiness. Let's test it out, right? Because at the moment we're winning, everything's good. When we're losing and people are not playing, then what's it going to be like, right? So the test is to come, and it's all going to be emotional test, a mentality test. Before we even get to individual cases of a 19-year-old that's played for England, scored for England, that a year and a half ago, none of us could see him in our first team, let alone England's World Cup squad. So things move very fast in football. As for Ethan, superstar, started at 15, played 17, playing regular due to injury. Now we have injuries in forward areas, Elliot, and even is still on reduced minutes, right? So these are the challenges of football. About 2 years ago, mate, Zinchenko was one of my most favorite players. I'm thinking, well, you've transformed us. I could never see you being out of this team. I watched him play for Forest the other day. He didn't last the game, injured again. And I realized how much we've moved forward.
Yeah.
You know, we were carrying that resource in our club and expecting to win the league. That's how fast things change, you know? So things will change back for those young players. They just need to relax, take their time, and maybe slow down and develop.
The thing that happens, I think, when a young player breaks into the team at a young age, that sets the bar of expectation for how much they'll play, where they are in their development, and any kind of reset of expectations feels like a demotion or a disappointment, right? But at 18 or 19 years old, when you're at a club that's competing for the Champions League and the Premier League, it's okay to have 1,000-minute season. You know what I mean? It's okay to be in and out, but you're training with the best players in the world. You're developing your skill set. I guess one angle of this reporting, though, is that Thomas Tuchel has owned some responsibility for unsettling a 19-year-old kid at the club that raised him by sort of saying he needs to play more if he wants to be in the England squad and this, that, and the other thing. And I get the England manager is responsible for England, not for Arsenal, but it may not be the best look. I wonder if you think he should be rethinking how he speaks about this in light of the fact that it's a young player at the club that raised him. Yeah,
well, Tuchel is a very good manager, but he can be clumsy with his words. Look what he said about Jude Bellingham a few months ago, saying his behavior was, paraphrasing, disgusting, blah, blah, blah. He had to retract that. But he's setting up his selection criteria, which is his right as a manager. Now, Nico O'Reilly's come in. He's a good player. I'm not sure if he's left back. He was number 10 playing for Man City, much like Miles was a 6/8 playing left back. So we can't say too much there. He's a bit taller, but trust me, let's see how this one develops, shall we, in that position. But yeah, Miles is not getting the same minutes as Nico O'Reilly. I think he started the last 7 or 8 games, right? So he's ahead. If that's Tuchel's selection criteria, then absolutely fine. From our perspective now, from a Miles perspective, he needs to hold station and be really robust to the messages and the noise that's out there. When he came into the team, there was all the red card stuff, the attitude stuff. He managed to go through that. He then plays for England, delivers. Then suddenly the summer comes along and Arsenal find a checkbook and they've got Calafiori finds a calf, and suddenly we're in he's thinking, hold on, the things have changed very much for me now. Because of the nature of Sparta Prague, Hincapi played that game absolutely the right decision, in my opinion. Now people are saying he's third choice. Well, who's going to play second centre back when Gabriel eventually doesn't play a game? So he's in that group of 4 left footers for the left half of our defence, and shock horror, is the one that's probably last. And shock horror, he's the youngest, most least experienced.
Yeah.
In the most elite environment you can possibly get, with a group of other clubs in Europe.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you forget how far you've come and where you are, and we just need to chill.
I think there's an interesting tension that's going to develop. This is not related to Miles. This is more broadly in football at the big clubs. The only way you're going to win things in the modern football environment with the fixture list that's piling up is to have a deep squad. It's the only way you're going to win.
Yeah.
And
deep, good squad.
Right. A deep, good. Well, yes, a deep, good squad. Traditionally, players have not wanted to be second or, heaven forbid, third choice. So I think there's going to be an interesting tension, Clive, and this might bring parity into football in some ways, which is the best, biggest clubs will need to be 2 and 3 deep at some positions to survive the fixture list that they have. And players are going to have to decide if 1,500 minutes at Madrid or Arsenal or City or Bayern Munich is what they want on a top club wage, or if they'd rather get 3,000 minutes at Bournemouth. And that is going to change, because realistically, especially if the Club World Cup is going to, as I'm sure it will, become an every summer thing, and internationals aren't going to go away, and we've got Nations League here to stay, and then the clubs want to play League Cup, FA Cup, Champions League, and League. Clive, as long as that stays the situation, the kind of squad Arsenal have built is the kind of squad you're going to need. I mean, shit, look at the squad we built, and we're still struggling to get the right number of players on the pitch available for games. So how do you think this will balance players' expectation for playing time balanced against the fact that the biggest clubs are going to start to demand to be 2 and 3 deep at key positions?
I think it's something that culture is going to have to change in sport. Squads and starting and finishing games. I mean, I love my rugby, right? So the England rugby team was announced today for New Zealand at the weekend. And basically, there's a player called Tom Curry. He's a back row forward, we say, Elliot. And basically, he's up for World Player of the Year. He's a fantastic player, plays for Lions a lot. He's on the bench. He's on the bench because last autumn, they lost 3 games in the last 25 minutes of those games by about 1 score. So this autumn, they've kept a strong bench and they've won their game so far. So there's a complete different strategy. Now, that's rugby. It's different, but they have 7 or 8 subs, can't remember now. And they really are focusing on finishing with strength and power. It's coming to football. It really is. But every single one of those players in our squad have been defining themselves on starting 11s and minutes played. Minutes played at the end of the game, at this moment in time, don't feel as good as minutes played at the start of the game.
Yeah.
That needs to change because where the game is going, it's becoming, you used a great word the other day, you was better than words than me, attritional. The game is becoming so attritional, we have to be ahead of it. And I think we are. But we have to go again. We have to go again and say to people, you're a really good player, but I need to fight with them for the first half of this game. And I want you to come on, Miles, and pick their pockets. Do you know what I mean? Can he accept that? Because you can't make yourself 6'3" to defend a 6'5" centre forward, but you can come on once we've seen him off to pick their pockets. Is that acceptable? And I think this is where we have to go culturally as football players and football people. When we don't see someone not start, our phones go mad, didn't they?
Yeah.
So we're not there yet, are we?
No, we're we're definitely not. And the irony is the case study, the test subject might be Arsenal, because Arsenal are the team in world football right now that are 2 and 3 deep at every position with players that would have every right to expect to start at most clubs. And it's going to be a test case to see if those players remain happy on their excellent top club wage in their role as a member of the squad versus first name on the team sheet. And Liverpool, by the way, developing a little of that with like the Ekitike Isak thing. There's already been weird noises there. But with Kai and Gyökeres, we're going to see there will be interest in Germany for a Kai if he can stay fit. There will be interest in Miles, as there should be, one of the most talented young players in world football. Like these scenarios, Nani Madueke, we love him. We're excited for him. We haven't seen as much of him as we might like. But is Nani going to be comfortable being behind Leo and Eze or behind Saka? We will be the test case for this over the next couple of seasons.
We will, but I think it's part of our improved squad management and improved efficiency in the market. So, for example, we've had a deep squad, but if you got Tomiyasu in your squad, your squad's not deep. Do you see what I mean? If you got Zinchenko with paper calves, your squad's not deep. This is the thing. We've now replaced Tomiyasu with a up to now robust Mosquera. And suddenly everyone's going, whoa, look at Arsenal's defence. Because they see Mosquera play. They're thinking, flipping hell. I said to you on one IR, I didn't know he came on in one game because he looks like
he came on at halftime and it took like 10 minutes to notice it. Yeah.
Well, I just come back from the bar and I went, hold on, where's Saliba? I mean, literally, I didn't notice. He looked his stature looked so good. I didn't see Elliot. I didn't see. And that tells you where we are. He can come on at Anfield and do what he did. It's quality of depth. I had a comment say to me, Clive, deep squads is nothing new. You know that? And I said, yeah, but deep having a Mosquera and a Saliba for right centre half, that's new.
Yeah.
121, 124, both contractually signed up for 5 years. That's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, especially one last thing before we get into the Sunderland game. There's a report that Martin Odegaard is going to Norway to be with his national team, which he is obviously an important figure for, and they have important games.
Yeah.
But obviously not playing. He will continue his rehab there.
Yeah.
I guess I have a two-part question. One is, do you have any issue with him doing this? Two is, does the fact that he's doing this suggest to you he might be further away in his return than we might otherwise think?
I don't think he's back for the Spurs game.
Yeah, I agree.
But I also think sometimes you got to say to yourself, you know what? This is very important for Norway. They haven't qualified for tournament for a while. He's their David Beckham. He's their skipper. He's their golden boy.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to be there is really important for them, the players, and obviously for him. If they do qualify, then suddenly, maybe next April, international break, you know what I mean? Lads, can we keep him because we're trying to win the Champions League and the Premier League for the first time in 22 years? Yeah. Can we keep him? And I don't think there'll be much issue. Do you see what I mean? And that's how you work it, you know? I'm sure they've got physios out there and their training plans are exchanged, etc., etc. I think it's very important for his mentality. And I hope to see that favour return when we're trying to win the big ones.
That actually raises a question. Do you worry at all? Let's say we're 4 points clear in April or 2 points clear in April at the top of the table and in the late rounds of the Champions League, and that World Cup is coming. And suddenly a couple of these players who have been fine being a part of the Arsenal group start to worry about their World Cup dreams slipping, and they're starting to get anxious about that. Could the World Cup, could the impending World Cup play a role, if not at Arsenal, at other clubs as well, just in terms of those last couple months of the season as players' minds start to wander towards, you know, the biggest footballing tournament that exists?
I think if the mentality side of things I've already spoken to, and that's one aspect of it. I do think the World Cup will play a part, but I also not concerned. We've often spoken about our selling strategy, haven't we? And I feel this buying strategy is the first stage of our selling strategy, because we'll soon find out who's comfortable within the environment. We'll soon find out who's comfortable with their minutes. Our play style may have changed, moved away from certain players and towards other players, and some players may feel as though they don't fit any longer. They used to fit. Now, and suddenly, I'll just give an example. Say Ben White, for example. We all love Ben White. He's contractually signed up. He will kill for us. He'll kill for us. And, you know, when he's out on that pitch, he may say, you know what? I'm not playing as much as I want to. And I'm going to give an example. Don't bite my head off. But Manchester United could do with a versatile, multifunctional defender that can play right back, but could also play in the centre back in a 3 or a 2. And they're going to offer me the same money and a 5-year contract. And I'm going to play every single week. What does he do?
Yeah.
What does he do? Now, we're not going to give him away for a set of tracksuits and a set of balls. So what does he do? Right. So, and this is where we're going. Now, that's Timber's ascension will drive our selling strategy. Do you see what I mean? And there's a couple of young defenders in France who I've seen that can stand in that position, no problem at all. You know, so this is part of the evolution of the game. It's a much easier decision to make if he's got a medal in his back pocket. But I think it's just something that happens. You know what can happen? Suddenly we just change our style slightly. Odegaard comes back in, and we like the Odegaard, Ben White, Saka thing, and suddenly we move away. Anything can happen in football. Anything can happen. So it's about being ready, fit, ready for the opportunity, taking it. I thought his last performance was better, the best one I'd seen. He looked better in himself. He needs more time on the pitch to really establish himself. But yeah, things change very, very quickly at it.
Yeah, it'd be one to keep an eye on, obviously a long way off, so we can worry about that at the time. And I mean, as much as I understand how I framed it to, I think, make for the best conversation, but I think the more likely outcome is that by April, we're already champions. So we don't have to worry about any of this.
Are you worried about City?
Am I worried about City?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look.
Well, you worry about everything.
I'm worried. Yeah, I'm worried about Fulham. I'm worried about all of them. I mean, I'm worried if we'll make the Europa Conference League next season. No, I mean, I would say this. Yes, City are a good side that have the best player in the world, and Haaland is certainly capable of doing something for them like what Salah did for Liverpool last season, which is cover up the warts they do have enough that they're able to win games. I mean, at the end of the day, if you start every game 1 goal to the good, you're going to win a lot of football matches. And Holland right now means that City start every game 1 goal to the good, basically. But they are more flawed than we are, would be my take on it, right? Yeah. We are ahead of them, and we are, in my view, so far better than them. I'll say this, though, and this is where I really believe this. Don't let the deep squad stuff fool you. You don't win shit without your best players. And if we keep having to play long stretches of the season without our best players available, we will not win anything. You know, I love Mikel Merino, and I love Christian Norgard, and I love, Nani Madueke or players like that. I love Eza. If we don't have Odegaard, if we don't have Saka, if we don't have Saliba and Gabby, if we don't have, Kai or Gyökeres, one of them, then unfortunately, I got bad news for you. We won't win stuff, because a deep squad helps you get through those rocky periods, and in this last period has very, very much done that. But over the course of a season, you have to have your best players on the pitch more often than not. So that would be my only comment. But right now, I see us as the best team, and I see us as the best team that is already in the lead. So that's a good place to be. Okay, that's going to do it. A little bit of a weird episode, but hopefully an enjoyable episode during a time when it's kind of hard to come up with too much stuff to talk about. And you can wind up getting stuck into things that really don't need the attention, or you can wind up talking about nonsense. So we may be aired on the side of nonsense more than anything, but that's okay. Hopefully, you'll join us over on Patreon or Apple subscriptions for the Adam Cleary podcast tomorrow, which is super exciting. I think you'll love that. We got more of the Cup Winners' Cup content coming, so lots of stuff to keep you going over there, over here, just wherever you are. As always, we love you. We're so glad you're here. Now we keep our fingers crossed for everybody on international duty. And I'm sure that'll go just fine. Thanks. Okay, let's leave it there. Back with Main Pod Monday. Adam Cleary tomorrow. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10 first note.